Hello and welcome, Stephanie Connolly, to the Flambeau Noir 2021. And so, for people that don't know who Stephanie is, um, Stephanie Connolly has been practicing demonic magic since 1984 and has been an initiated Daemonolatress since 1990. She's actively practicing and has over 35 years experience in Goetia and grimoiric magic, as well as traditional craft, and has penned over 25 books on demonolatry and daemonic magic. Now, I know you also did a book on necromancy as well, did you not?
Yes, I did. It was in context with Daemonolatry. So
Ah, okay.
there's three of them actually. They're kind of a set.
Oh, cool. Great. And so today your talk is, what's the title of your talk today?
It is writing your reality. So we're going to basically talk about how we can use the written word as a magical practice to manifest change in our lives.
Okay, excellent. And I want to thank you for participating in this and giving this presentation. And I'll give you the floor, and you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. It's really good to be here. I'm going to screen share now. See if I can get us going. Do we have the screen share up there?
Yes, but I guess your feed is frozen here for. Just give it a second
Oh,
here to catch up. Sorry. Oh, there we
okay.
go. I think it's good now.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and start with talking about uh, let's just go over what we're going to kind of cover. We're going to talk about some statistics, the psychology of writing things down, the history of writing in magic. We're going to talk about intent and emotion, using writing in our magic to manifest reality. And then we're going to do a short writing exercise. So those of you who want to get a pen and paper ready, and you can either do the exercise here or you can, jot a note and do it later, however that works for you. So first I want to start with some statistics. I actually looked for actual studies, and I found one from a Franciscan university where they actually did the study, but you often read in these business magazines, uh, different business journals that talk about these statistics, and some of them cite Harvard and Yale studies that apparently don't exist because I couldn't find them. So here are some of those statistics that I found. Studies have found that people who write down their goals are 42% more likely to reach them. And one of the reasons I think for that is you're at that point, once you commit it to paper, you are holding yourself accountable. Now, apply writing it down with actually having a third party also holding you accountable. I think it makes a big difference. And I think that increases your chances for success. Setting specific and challenging goals increases the likelihood for success by 90%. Again, I think that it's an accountability thing, because once you commit it to paper, it's already kind of partially manifest. And we're going to talk about that here some more in a few minutes. And a lot of business journals, including magazines like Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine and uh, big magazines like that, they have done polls, and one of the things that they found most successful people have in common is they keep and use a daily planner and or a journal. So, and we're going to talk about using those things too to also help manifest your reality, because even when you're doing magic, there has to be some real world follow through, especially if you're working on big things like you're changing a career path or you're trying to change some internal programming to change yourself, which is a big thing in magic. So let's also talk about why the psychology of the written word here. First of all, when you write things down and I'm not talking typing things down, I'm talking physically pen to paper, you are minimizing distractions and you're establishing focus. You are focused on nothing but that pen and that paper. It makes the goal or whatever that manifestation is more tangible and more memorable. A lot of times when you take a class on how to study, for example, they often tell you to write things down because it helps improve your memory and your recall. So when you write something down, it kind of solidifies in your mind as well. You've not only established it tangibly on paper, you've established it firmly in your mind. Again, we're going to talk about the accountability and motivation. In just regular day-to-day life, you may hold yourself accountable to a spouse or a friend or a coworker. In demonic magic, for example, you may call on a demonic force to help influence the situation, but also to hold yourself accountable. Writing things down unclutters the brain. You can get stuff out, and this is where journaling comes in. You can get out toxic feelings and all of these things to basically clear your head and free it up for focusing. Self-assessment. People who keep journals, especially magical journals. If you've ever written a magical journal and then gone back to it 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, you can actually see growth, and you may see things from a different perspective. So not only self-assessment, but perspective, because your perspective will change as you move forward. And also writing things down as a statement of, this is what I want to accomplish, or this is where I want to be. It can boost your confidence and help you feel like you actually can achieve the goal. So these are all psychological things for which the written word has been proven to help with. Let's see here. Let me find my... So let's talk about a little bit of history of written magic. I'm not going to go into, examples, note citations, and all that. You can look a lot of this stuff up on your own time, and you'll find some really, that's a rabbit hole you could go down for a week or two. So written spells have power, and magicians have known this for centuries. In ancient Egypt, the word was sacred, and it was powerful. And so you'll find in a lot of ancient cultures instances and examples of how the written word was used in various spell work. For example, in ancient Egypt, they would scribe the names of their enemies on pots, and then they would break the pots, and it was a form of sympathetic magic that was like cursing their enemies. Or if you go into Greco-Roman history, they would use either clay tablets or these very, very thinly pounded tablets made out of tin, and they would actually scribe curses on those and then throw them into sacred bodies of water or sacred pools or springs at various temples. And archaeologists have recovered these, so that's how we know what they are. They'll say things like, I hope my neighbor's cow dies, or protect me from a drought, or whatever. So, and then of course you have famous words and magic squares that have magical uses. For example, everyone knows abracadabra, which is an enchantment that allegedly cures fever and disease, or the infamous satyr square, here shown on the right, which is a word square containing a 5 Latin palindrome, often used for protection or to break illnesses or curses. They've actually found these squares in ancient buildings, like above doorways. So you figure they had to have been using it as some sort of maybe even a ward or a protection. I personally like the theory, because there's various translations of this square. I like the theory that it's actually a prayer to a serpent god. So that's something to look up for fun if you have some time to kill. So why do words have power? Well, because we associate each word that you use has an intent and emotion that you've attached to it. So, and this is by default. And this is where, like, for example, cuss words, why those are so powerful. So when you literally tell someone to, to fuck off, you are basically throwing that intent out there. And that word has a powerful meaning behind it emotionally when you say it. So that's why when you write things down, they can be so powerful. And again, when you write down the words, you're basically manifesting your intent. It's like the beginning. It's not the full manifestation. It's the beginning of the manifestation. You have declared exactly what you want to do. Now, I want to tell you a little story. I'm going to give you an example of how intent and emotion can actually be a very powerful thing. And this is a personal example. So I learned just how powerful words could be when I was about 17. And in one of my high school classes, our teacher had each of the students stand up and share one life goal with the class. So since I wasn't first, I was like 15th in line or whatever. I spent some time there while everyone else was, doing their bit. And I actually wrote down what I was going to say. And it said, my own column, age 30. That's all I wrote. My classmates got up one by one and said stuff like, I'd like to have my own house someday, or I hope to have my degree in 4 years. I got up when it was my turn and said loudly and with probably more conviction than I should have, I'm going to have my own column in a magazine by the time I'm 30. And there was this moment of dread silence throughout the room because I didn't use words like hope or like to. I said, I'm going to. This is what is going to happen. And you would have thought I had just told them that I was going to kill my own mother because everybody was just quiet. And then, that was the end of that. But by the time I was 26 years old, I'd been writing articles for an international trade magazine for a few years. And I remember one summer afternoon, the editor called me and said, hey, we'd like you to write a regular column for the magazine. And so sure enough, I actually had my own column in a trade magazine by the time I was 26 years old. So that right there is the power of writing something down and then stating it with intent. And what you can do, literally, magically speaking, just by being intentional. So after that, and after I realized just how powerful words could be, I started keeping these goal lists, all phrased in much the same self-confident manner. And anyone who probably picked up one of those lists probably thought, oh my gosh, she's so egotistical. But each year I go through the goal list and I make changes and I modify it and I move things that are finished, that I've actually reached that goal. I've moved it into a reached goal list. And then I add things to it. But that goal list gets shorter and shorter as I get older because I don't have as many lofty goals as I did when I was young. So this is literally where we're going to start talking about using our writing to manifest our reality and doing it in a day-to-day way that you're actually bringing and incorporating magic into your day-to-day work. Now, you can do this specifically as a magical exercise, and I recommend that as well. So a couple years back, I wrote a book called The Book of Agaris, and the concept behind it being that you could magically dedicate a journal to a specific purpose and a corresponding demonic force or spirit that corresponded with that purpose. For example, like money, love, health, or even cursing, and whatever you wrote in that book would come to pass. So basically, it was kind of like keeping a goal list here. So I don't recommend this for cursing specifically, unless you're doing like a toxic feelings journal where you're just getting everything out, like you're just shoving out all of that, venom and anger, or any frustrations you have. Those are really good to keep just for that. And I don't know anyone who hates people that much that they would keep an actual cursing journal. But for things like, career and relationships and healing and that sort of thing, keeping books like this is probably a good idea. But it's all in the phrasing. You can do this with your goal lists. You can do it with journaling. You can do it with scheduling and to-do lists, and even reviewing a journal. So, or when you're going back through and reviewing your journals. So, but it's all in the phrasing. You want to stick with statements that either declare your intent or assume that you have already reached your end goal. Now, for example, like I want a new car versus I will have a new car versus I will have a silver Lexus versus I drive a silver Lexus. Okay, now this may sound completely counterintuitive because a lot of times, like in magical work, like the idea is either to like crush your ego. But in this sense, I think ego is a good thing because it helps give you confidence, and kept in check, and being very aware of the ego is probably really important here. And you also want to make sure that your goals and everything are relatively realistic. Like that it could have a chance of happening. For example, if you're 55 years old and you want to, be a prima ballerina, it's not going to happen at 55 years old if you've never danced a day in your life. That's just maybe unrealistic. But, if you have a realistic goal, like I would like to write my memoir, then, or I'm going to write my memoir, or I will write my memoir, or let's say you want to change something about yourself. Maybe all of those phrases, everything you write down, the phrase starts with I am. I am more self-confident. I am great at playing piano. I am, a competent coworker. I am manager material. Whatever it is that you're working toward, magically speaking. So, so again, check your humility at the door when you're writing this stuff, because now is not the time to be timid or wishy-washy about what you want. If you really want to manifest your reality and you want to write those things down and begin that manifestation, it does require a little bit of ego and a strong sense of self to declare what you want. It's also really important to know exactly what you want, and it'll get you thinking about what you want. Writing things down can actually help you figure out what's going on, because then you can go back and you can review it and you can say, well, I'm seeing a similar theme in all of this stuff. All of these things are pointing to I need to work on my self-confidence or whatever, or I need to build some skills. So we're going to do a quick writing exercise, and then we're going to go ahead and move into the question answer phase of the presentation. So, and you don't have to share this or anything. This is just for you. Nobody's going to see it. And that's the great thing about it, is nobody's going to see any of the stuff that you write down. So you can choose one of these, or you can do all of them, or you can save them for a later time. Either write one statement declaring something you want for yourself, or something you want to improve in yourself, or write down a list of goals, but state these things as if you already have them, like as if you're writing down like things I've accomplished in my lifetime list. Or third, you can write a statement declaring what you want as if you already have it, or how you want to be as if you already have it. So I'm just going to put this here for a second so you can copy down any information. The Book of Agaris is the one that you'll want to read if you want to know more about creating magical books. And there's my websites if you want more information there, or my email if you have questions that you don't get answered today that you would like me to answer. Because unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to go hang out in the Discord to chat with everybody.
So thank you. Good. Thank you very much for that presentation. Yeah, it was very interesting, and I'm leaving the. I got the information up there. Okay, so you've stopped screen sharing now, I guess.
I did. I'm going to stop that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Switch over.
Did I click the button? I did.
Okay. Okay, so I think we got it back in the right way. So let me see what we have here for questions. Um, so somebody mentioned keeping a daily journal of what happened during the day. What kind of benefit would you get from that?
Back door open.
Oh, sorry. I guess there was a bit of a break there. Somebody was asking what the benefit of keeping a regular daily journal would be.
Well, if you've ever there's there's a book out there called oh, what is it? Why can't I ever think of it? It's The Artist's Way, and she explains an idea of an exercise of doing morning pages for people who need to be more productive or more creative. Um, Writing things down and getting them out, just whatever comes to mind, whatever is running through your mind, you just write it down first thing in the morning. It gets it out of your brain, unclutters the brain, and helps you focus on different tasks. One of the exercises you can do, especially before magical work, if you have a short attention span,
Mm-hmm.
um, is try journaling before you meditate, or try journaling before ritual work to help you focus, just to get all of the crazy stuff from your day-to-day life out of your mind, so your mind isn't cluttered. So there are a lot of benefits to journaling daily like that.
Cool. Now I know that some people like to do a a daily review, and sometimes they'll do it mentally, but they'll also do a written one. Um, and they find that it helps them with their dream practice as well, because a lot of times when you have a dream, it has something to do with what you're doing during the day, and
Hmm.
it almost like pre-processes the day for you. And then when the dream happens, it doesn't need to work as hard to process it, and it frees up your mind or something. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but somehow it gives you more awareness within the dream if you review the daily events before you go to sleep.
Right. And I think that's also a process of decluttering. It's getting out all of your daily worries and stresses. I mean, everything from, maybe one of your kids isn't doing well in school and got in a fight, and your husband just, had a car accident on the way home, and it wasn't a bad thing, but it was still a fender bender, and it's still going to cost, $2,000 to fix. And these are the things, these just little tiny things in our day-to-day lives can really hinder our magical practice and make us feel like we're not connected spiritually, because we're just so focused on those things. And it can make it hard to focus and concentrate on things that matter as well.
Now,
So,
if you were to something that I thought of while you were talking during that presentation was if you were to actually create like a sigil where you
mhm.
take the word, right, and that's one method of creating a sigil is you write out your statement and then you condense those letters down into a sigil, right?
Mhm.
Does that how would that tie in with the other stuff that you were saying?
Well, that would tie into focus and intent. So, as you're actually writing the words that you want to condense down into the sigil, there's an emotion between each word that you're writing.
Okay.
You're focusing and your intent on it, and then the actual practice of turning that into a sigil, however you may be doing that, um, you are like hyper focusing on that particular statement of intent, and that alone is enough to really uh, solidify it in your mind, solidify your intent in your mind, and it'll keep reminding you every time you see that sigil. It's going to keep reminding you. And one thing I tell people to do is, if they've written down their intent, and they even bring in, some demonic influence, and they draw the demon sigil underneath the statement that they've made. If you put that someplace where you see it often, and you can do this with sigil magic as well, you put that sigil where you're going to see it often, it's going to remind you of your intent, and it's going to keep you focused on that one thing, and increase your chances of success with that thing, because you're going to continually work on it, because it will always be at the forefront of your mind.
Okay, right. Now, one thing that I've noticed is that if I'm trying to figure something out, or even just remember something, if I put a lot of effort into trying to figure it out, to the point where I'm almost exhausted, and then I rest, it's
Hmm.
in that rest often that the answer comes.
Yes. Well, they say a good night's sleep often offers perspective in the morning. So, yeah, sometimes when we overthink things, we can overthink things into a stalemate. So, that's where also writing it down and getting it out of your head is super helpful.
Okay.
Because if you just let that continually go through your mind over and over again, it's going to kind of like clutter all the energy centers in its own way, mentally. And I think people don't realize just how powerful the mind is and how powerful psychology is to magic, because sometimes you have to be in the right frame of mind. If you don't specify clear intent, and you're wishy-washy about anything, then it's not going to manifest as completely as it could if you have a very clear intent, which is why sitting down and writing out what you want and then looking it over and
Mm.
saying, what am I really saying here?
It
I'm saying, yeah, okay,
crystallizes it.
right. Yeah, you kind of refine it, and in a way you even alchemize it and
Mm.
draw in the like the underlying meaning, the essence of what you're actually writing. You can actually pick that out.
So, somewhere along the same lines as what we were just talking about before, Kindra Ravenmoon asks, would you recommend writing out daily goals the evening prior? I guess that would give your mind a chance to kind of process it.
You can do that. Yes, a lot of people, especially in planning communities, they often do like an evening planning the night before, just to plan out their following day, so that that's one less thing they have to worry about in the morning. Especially if they've got a lot going on in the morning, you may not have time to sit there and write out morning pages or write in your planner. Especially if you wake up late or something, and the kids are late for school, and you have a meeting first thing in the morning, and you have to get there early. All of these things can make it really difficult to do morning pages, or if you're just not a morning person like I'm not. um, but yeah, I actually keep so many planners I can't even begin to tell you. um, and I have, like, my regular household to-do list, I have my writing to-do list, I have my business to-do list, and I go through all of those and I double check them a couple of times a day. And on Sundays, I will go through and plan out my following week. So I take about an hour every Sunday for planning.
So it's interesting too. So when you have goals written down, you also get that dopamine rush of kind of checking it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's I've succeeded, I get to check off that goal, and so that almost trains you or conditions you to become more successful.
Yes, well, it does. And if you learn how to like take the big goals and break them down into smaller chunks, because I think oftentimes if we just have a list of like big goals, then it can be kind of frustrating because you may become overwhelmed by it rather easily. Whereas you take a big goal, like, saying, I want to have a column by the time I'm 30, and you break it into smaller goals, like write an article for this magazine, write an article for this magazine, and you break it into these smaller, more achievable goals that give you that dopamine rush when you check it off. It's a lot easier to hit that big goal.
Chunk it down.
Mm-hmm.
Kindra Ravenmoon said, "Thank you for addressing my question. Yes, I'm not a morning person. That's why I asked. LOL."
Yes, absolutely. I completely understand that. I tried the morning pages for like, oh, I don't know, 2 weeks before I just fell off the wagon there, because it was just too exhausting. I was like, I can't do this. I have to get up like a half hour earlier just to do this.
That's funny. It's funny. We have another comment here. Jessica Roberts says, "Now that she is live, I'm like, duh, and all my questions are gone."
Well, that's okay, because at any point, like if you still have questions, you can either reach me on Facebook, or you can email me, and I will definitely get back to you if you find that there's questions. Is this going to be like a replay? Like they'll be able to replay it at
Yeah.
some point? Oh,
So,
good.
pretty much almost immediately after, within about 20 minutes, the video will be back available for people to watch as an archive.
Oh, okay. So they'll be able to pause on that slide that has all
Yes,
my contact info. Okay.
exactly. And if you want to send it to me, I can put it in the description. I can actually put it in a comment and I'll pin it to the top.
Oh, okay.
So
That'll work.
we have another
Yeah,
question
I made
here.
it a little shorter. I'm sorry about that. There's
Oh, no, that's
a lot
fine.
of time
That
for
just
Q&A.
Yeah, it just gives extra time for interaction. Um, and we get to see your face more.
True.
So, where we have, okay, Joel Rappaport says, do you feel the more you practice manifesting stuff, the faster you can make it happen due to practicing thinking how you can do it?
Oh, absolutely. I think as with anything, being able to manifest, I think you do become more adept at it. It becomes more of a second nature. It doesn't become as difficult. It gets easier. Especially when you're dealing with big goals, like, oh, I want to write a novel. Well, you write one novel and you're like, well, I'm going to have to write a second novel now. And then it gets easier. Each one gets easier. One of the interesting things about that is, a lot of people don't realize that, like, the old timey magicians, when they're talking about manifestation, a lot of times they're not actually talking like, demonic manifestation. They're talking manifestation in results. So
Mm.
when you're doing any type of magic, and this is, and practicing something like this is going to improve your magic a great deal too, because it's going to teach you how to focus on your intent, and it's going to teach you how to do the follow through in the real world, because we all know that we can, like, throw magic at something, uh, you know, till the cows come home. And sometimes stuff doesn't happen if you just sit back and just wait for it to happen. You have to literally grab your life by the horns and take it where you want it to go. So you actually have to do some real world follow through. You can't just, sit and meditate in the temple, or, call on demons and say, here, give me this thing. Because the demonic, oftentimes, all they do is they're like your support staff. Okay. You invoke them, you tell them what you're trying to do, and you solidify your intent by and show them how serious you are with, like, an offering or whatever. Say, I'm really serious about this. Here, I'm going to prick my finger and I'm going to do some bloodletting, and I'm willing to suffer for what I want. And then they're going to help you with that, but sometimes in unexpected ways. Sometimes they're going to point out something that needs work before you can reach that final goal. And I actually wrote an article about this just the other day, because people kept coming to me with, like, why didn't my pact work? Well, because you were focusing on the final outcome and just sitting back waiting for it to happen. You weren't actually going out and doing the steps, accomplishing the goals that you needed to accomplish in order to reach that final outcome. You still have to do that. And sometimes the demonic will, like, shine a glaring light on your fears, especially your fears, and how you yourself are holding yourself back. Because a lot of times, some of the things that are holding us back are either, fears we have, other mental blockages, which often it all comes back to fear usually. Um, so
Or
all of
shame.
these things, yeah, or shame, or any other something, anything else that represses you. It's some sort of repression. You repress your own success a lot of the times. It's usually not external forces keeping you from reaching your goals. It's you. So
Well, one of the things that I like to say is that magic gives you an edge in whatever you're trying to achieve, but you still have to put in the real world effort. The magic gives you an edge in whatever you're trying to achieve.
right. Well, yeah, and in that sense, like, the calling in spirits to help you with that, they will give you the opportunities, but you have to be wise enough to see the opportunities for what they are, and then take them and follow through with them. One of the examples that I like to share with people is when I first when I first started my fiction writing career, I wanted to have a bestseller. So I threw magic at the problem, and I just kind of sat back and I was like, okay, well, I've done the work because I already put the books out there. And I did get a windfall. I had, three best-selling, one best-selling novel and two best-selling novellas for like 2 years. They were like, they went crazy. But the problem was I didn't know what to do with it. I had that success and I had no clue what to do with it. So after 2 years, that success just kind of like drifted off and I was back to where I started. So then I was like, okay, so I need to do something different. So I worked with another demon. I was like, okay, so how are we going to do this? I want to get myself back up to that status. I want to have this, 6-figure writing career and, whatever. I want to be as well known as Stephen King or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the demon like literally started throwing opportunities at me, but for public speaking. I had no idea that rather famous writers had to do a lot of public speaking, and I was for me. So I was like, this is a huge handicap. I'm going to have to go back through and learn how to communicate with people without being terrified. And I did. I slowly did it. I started like speaking at conferences and doing these live video conferences and doing things where I had to be in front of people and speak in front of groups of people in some way. And over time, it got easier and easier. And this took a good 5-6 years. Until finally I was able to stand up in front of a room of over 200 people and give a speech.
Nice.
And so, yeah, so these are the types of things. This is how demons kind of throw stuff at you. They're like, oh, yeah, I'll give you success. Here's all the stuff that you don't like to do and that terrifies you. Now let's deal with that first. And you're like, oh, great, thanks. But it's up to you if you want to commit to the challenge and do it,
It kind of reminds me of that quote that's attributed to Joseph Campbell, where he says something like, the cave you fear to enter contains the treasure you seek.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
And now it's interesting because you were talking about public speaking, and Kendra has another question here, and she said slightly off topic, but because of that segue, it's not really off topic anymore. She said, I would like to know when Stephanie will produce more videos, or if she's planning to.
I actually am. Last year I took the year off from a lot of things just because I had like such a vigorous publishing schedule. I think I did 16 published pieces last year, and that was very intense. But I am going to try to do more like monthly videos, like a monthly theme video, because yeah, I have been kind of slacking there, and I know that those are super helpful to people. So.
There's a cool comment here. Stephanie Lovix said, morning versus early planners. You usually bury a seed in the ground before it grows, so writing down before sleep makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's see. From the Light of the Darkness is here. A2 Malku. I've always wanted to ask you, how do you design the Enns you use in your books?
So the Enns are kind of an interesting thing.
Maybe you can say what that is.
Oh, okay. The Enns are basically what demonolators call demonic invocations, and they're believed to be in the language of the demonic, but basically I think Enns comes from the alchemical term Enns, where it's basically the essence of something. So when you use an Enn, like an invocation where you're calling on a spirit, you're basically calling their essence to you through audible sound. And that's why, you may get different energy types when you chant versus vibrate versus sing an Enn. You may get a different type of energy with each of those intonations. But basically, those were gotten through means of mediumship, where people go into an ascended state and they commune with the spirits directly. And you can do that on your own. I actually tell people, like, you can use like the prepared ends in the book. The only reason they're included in the book is because they've kind of become like a standard in the traditional demonolatry community. But that doesn't preclude you from being able to write your own invocations. And as a matter of fact, speaking of writing things down, I think sometimes, like, when you use off-the-shelf magic, it may not be as effective for you as an individual. You do need to add your own personal touch to all of your magic to make it extremely powerful. So creating your own invocations, your own ends, going into ascended states and communicating with the spirits and coming back with words that are specific to you and them, that connect you in some way, because you're going to have like an emotional feeling toward that. Again, you're going to have more intent. Or even if you write something down, if you write down an invocation, you should write it in your own language with your own words, because it's going to have more meaning to you and therefore more intent, more connection.
Okay, I appreciate that you tackled that. That was something that I'd wondered about as well. So we have another question here. Adversarial Self says, any insight on the power of expressive or poetic writing?
Well, I think a lot of times, especially when you're doing some sort of like creative writing, that literally comes from a deep part within yourself. And I think all of you watching who are writers in some sense, whether you write poetry or fictional narrative, or hell, even nonfiction, you know how words feel. You have a sense of that, maybe more of a connection with that, because you can express yourself in that way. You can express your heart through language. And so I think oftentimes when people are creative like that, they are touching something divine, like a divine spark within themselves that connects you with the divine all around us. I think creativity is like one of the most pure and true expressions of magic, because creative people have an idea and it blossoms and grows, and then they manifest it, whether it be music or art or technology, or because if they're an engineer, engineers create things, or if you're an artist.
Right. So that leads into a question that I had for you about writing fiction. So you've
Mm-hmm.
written some novels, and essentially you've created fictional worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, how real is that world that you created?
Well, let's just say, like, when I actually like get into my groove, sometimes I'll sit down with the computer and it's just not there. So I'll just start writing. And then suddenly I'm transported. It's like I'm really there. I will feel the emotions my characters are feeling. I will be excited for them, scared for them, even though I know that I'm in control and I'm the one driving. I still see what they see and feel what they feel and interact with those other characters in such a way that, they'll make me laugh and cry. I will sit here writing, laughing to myself or crying. My husband will come in and he'll be like, "You're making faces at the computer screen. Why are you doing that?" And it's like, because I'm actually feeling the emotion that my characters are feeling, and I'm right there with them. I am in that world that I've created. So, I mean, that just goes to, again, the power of psychology and how writing something, or even think about it, if you're a reader, if you read fiction and you're reading someone else's book, you are transported to that world, and those characters can become like friends. So like when one of them dies, you're just devastated.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and there's a and if a book gets very popular and it gets read by a lot of people, like let's say, Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles books or
Mm,
the Harry Potter books, right? So there's a
right.
lot of people that are kind of running that simulation in their hardware, right? And
Yeah.
it's a shared vision because they've all read that same book, which is written the same way. And they may have their own version of how it renders out, but it's still
Yeah.
essentially the same universe that they're all kind of traveling to. And we, understanding this on a magical level and understanding how thought forms work, could you like dig into that even a little bit more? in terms of creating worlds?
Oh, absolutely. I think you can actually manifest thought forms of a fictional character or even a fictional place. Because if you think about it, I mean, a lot of a lot of magic depends on visualization. So not only creating something from nothing, but also the visualization of that and being able to focus on that for long periods of time. So I think when you do that with anything, whether it's a book that you're reading or a book that you're writing, or it's you're creating your astral temple,
Mm-hmm.
it can become very real to you and in a sense very powerful for you as a mental space. And because I mean, we're only limited by our imaginations. We can live 1,000 different lives if we have a active enough imagination. So it's and we're also better able to put ourselves in someone else's position and try to see things from their side of things as well. And I do think like, worlds like that can connect us. And I also believe that, pop culture magic, within the realm of chaos magic,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a big thing where people will take fictional characters or, fictional deities or whatever and transform them uh, into its own thought form that can actually be worked with to your own success and gain or transformation, personal transformation.
Well, there are people that have listed themselves as being part of the Jedi religion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question here. Jessica Roberts says, I no longer believe in Jesus, but I miss praying. Can I pray to demons or ancient entities safely?
I think it really depends on how you define the demonic. So for me, I am completely I was Christian like when I was very young, and it took me years to shed those beliefs. Once I read enough history and did enough research that I realized that Christianity was kind of a product of its time, and it stole a bunch of things from different areas, added a sprinkling of new stuff, and voila, Christianity. Um, I think once you kind of realize that, you kind of realize that it really depends on your personal narrative, because people who are very Christian will swear up and down, and including Christian magicians, they will swear up and down that demons are evil, even if you present them with proof that for example, Astaroth was initially Astarte, um, and that was an ancient goddess, and there was nothing evil about her. Or even if you tell them that Satan was originally on God's payroll as someone who tempted men just to see if they'd fall for it, like, hey, let's see if this idiot, and it's just a word that means adversary. So it really depends on how you mentally view this. If you really think that, for example, demons are scary and that if you pray to them something bad's going to happen, then you will make it so through a self-fulfilled prophecy, because you believe that so strongly, you basically manifest that for yourself. So really, I mean, it depends on how you feel. I personally, I think a prayer to the demonic, and not in the sense of groveling, because a lot of people misconstrue prayer to be akin with groveling, like, oh, please give me this, and I am so unworthy, and all of that. And that's not, in demonolatry, that's not what prayer is. It's more like an acknowledgement of the forces of nature around you, or the particular force of that demonic force. And yeah, I suppose it could be thanking them for their help or their support or whatever it is, but I don't view it as groveling and I am so unworthy. Oh, throw me a bone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a sense, it's more like it's not only communing with the demonic outside yourself, it's also communing with the demonic within, because all of us are parts of the whole. We all have the divine spark within us. It's just that we're stuck as physical beings, whereas different parts of nature exist on maybe a different level than that. It's it's the same, but it's not the same. As above, so below. It's just to a lesser degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you're praying, sometimes we're actually praying to parts of ourselves for the strength that we need to get through something, or to help us find opportunities, or even if we are praying to an external force, it's not for, hey, just give me this thing. It's more like, help me obtain this thing for myself. So, and it's not an I'm an unworthy type thing. It's more like a I want to learn. I want to improve. I want to I'm willing to listen to what you have to say, you know.
Right. So, a kind of a related question is, what does the role of worship play within demonolatry, and how do you define worship?
So, worship actually just means to respect something and hold it in high regard. Basically, and the word demon, I think, requires some definition here too, because demon, by Christian perversion, are, scary little creatures in hell with horns, yada yada yada. It's a great metaphor. It is a great metaphor for like facing our fears and facing all the bad crap that happens in life. But when it comes to what these spirits actually are, they're divine intelligence. I define them as divine intelligence and sources of wisdom. So so when you're talking about worship, I hold in high regard and respect the divine intelligence. Because worship, a lot of people, again, they think groveling. They think, oh, I worship you, but it's more like, no, I really respect this force of nature. It's kind of like, I respect lightning enough to stay out of its way and, not stand out holding a rod, a metal rod in the middle of a flat plane or whatever, so I don't get hit by it. It's kind of the same thing.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you participating in this conference and giving your time to the community in this, in these crazy times when we're all stir crazy and locked down and unable to travel around. I think a lot of people will really appreciate that they can listen to somebody like you give a lecture and have a kind of a conference experience even while under lockdown.
Yes, thank you. And not only that, but it makes it so much easier to attend these things because, schedules don't, 1 hour is easier to fit into a schedule than like a whole weekend trip. So,
Right, absolutely.
so thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was my pleasure to have you on the conference, and um, I guess we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye.